Focus now on the global passport ranking for 2023, which is getting a little more interesting. For a long period of 5 years, Japan has ranked #1 in the Henley Passport Index in the amount in visa-free and visa-on-demand, which has measured global travel freedom. That's in terms of cost and what different citizens enjoy. But as of recent, Japan has dropped down to third position, as Singapore is now top, which gives citizens opportunity to visit 193 destinations out of 227 around the world visa-free. While Asia has long dominated the top of the leaderboard in the index created by London-based global citizenship and residence advisory firm Henley Partners, Europe is bouncing back. Germany, Italy, and Spain have all moved up into second place with visa-free access to 190 destinations. Japan and South Korea now joined in the #3 slot by Austria, Finland, and France, Luxembourg, and Sweden. Citizens from the 7 nations enjoy access to 189 destinations without needing a prior visa. Now, on the African continent, South Africa is ranked #52 with access to 106 nations. Nigeria is ranked 91, along with South Sudan, with access to 46 nations. Joining me now via Skype from the United Kingdom to discuss more on the global passport rating is a lecturer of politics and international relations of Liverpool Hope University, Dr. Bola Adediran. Good to have you join us.
Thank you for having me.
So basically, I want to focus on Nigeria because it's quite interesting. Whilst we have moved, I think it's 9 places up from 100 position to 91, we're sharing that position with South Sudan. We still only have access to about 46 countries, and they are majorly in Africa. What would you say that is responsible for our poor passport access?
Well, there are several reasons why the global mobility scores for countries like Nigeria is very low. Obviously, economy is a huge factor in determining which countries and which citizens enjoy those privileges that you have mentioned. The more a country is wealthy, the greater the likelihood that other countries would want to welcome their citizens, because, of course, there is an expected benefit in terms of tourism. There is an expected benefit in terms of the impact that it would have on the economy. But there are also other several factors that I think explain why countries like Nigeria rank very low. Instability is a great factor. Most countries are going to had restrictions on entry requirements for citizens from very unstable countries where there are risk of terrorism, for instance. And there is also questions around bilateral relationships. And so global mobility scores and passport indexes are a reflection of how strong in terms of a country's capacity to make diplomatic inroads into in other countries. And so there are a combination of factors that really explain why countries like Nigeria do poorly.
So it is more of what happens within the country and not the attitude of its or behavior of its citizens outside of the country, because that has been, one of the reasons people are talking about that. Look, whilst we have Nigerians who are doing very well abroad, there are a few who have taken to fraud and drugs. Has that also contributed?
I suspect that obviously it has. I mean, when I said instability, for instance, in a number of countries, instability is very internal. So you have a conflict, but at the same time, there have been instances where those particular political conflicts have repercussions outside of their territories. So in some instances, we have had citizens who have carried out terrorist attacks in other places. And that would have, obviously, implications on the capacity of citizens from those countries to be able to access other countries without much restrictions. So there is a relationship between internal factors and external factors. That's the point I'm trying to make. But at the same time, I think it's more reflective of the economic conditions of countries, really, rather than any particular attempts to single out certain countries or certain people from certain regions as undesirables or unwanted.
And it would be an error for anyone to think that a passport is just a mere travel document. From this conversation, it's quite clear that, look, there are limitations that one could experience when you have a passport with poor access. Talk to us about what can be done, because some will say, look, Nigeria has had her glory days. What can be done within the country to ensure that, look, we have more access, say, compared to a country like South Africa with 106, passport access?
No, South Africa is perhaps the first, the top-ranked African country. But even that, South Africa's access, or the access of citizens of South Africa, still pays in comparison to citizens from Tuvalu, for instance, or from El Salvador. The point basically is that one of the ways in which we can increase our access as Africans, particularly, is to also improve bilateral and multilateral relationships. The AFCFTA agreement would play a great role in this regard. Intra-African regional trade, the percentage is one of the lowest in the world in terms of regional organizations. Intra-African trade is around 15%, whereas you have places like Europe where regional trade is around 60%, or in places like North America where there is a whole lot of regional trade. So there are things that we can do, ensuring that we do more trade within ourselves, and when we do more trade within ourselves, it leads us to thinking about how can we remove visa restrictions. And all of these things have repercussions even for the strength of our economies. It's very interesting because when I was preparing for this interview, I found out that Nigerians, for instance, cannot travel easily to Egypt and to Kenya and to Congo. These are very surprising facts that ought to not be the case, because if we cannot allow for intra-regional mobility, then we should know that we are partly responsible for some of those forms of.
Absolutely, because there are countries in Africa where Nigerians will still require visas to visit, and that's quite shocking. I wish we could talk more about that, especially what the African Union is doing in this regard. But my time is up. Thank you so much for talking to us. Global Affairs Analyst and Lecturer of Politics and International Relations at the Liverpool Hope University, Dr. Bola Adediran.